So Kevin and I are here to kind of try to pull it all together, synthesize what we heard, what we learned. We'd love to get your input too as well. I'm going to go first, Kevin. From the keynote, your keynote, I took away a few things. One, I think that one of the big themes was that the growing complexity of data environments, more sources on more platforms, more types of data, the 3 V's, volume, velocity, and variety, is certainly finally taking root. And that really increases the complexity of data pipelines exponentially. It's also intrigued by the 4 segments of the data pipeline market you mentioned: ingest, transform, data ops, and orchestration. We certainly see players, even those we had today, like Fivetran, focused on ingest. We know that DBT and Coalesce are focused on transform. We saw DataOps.live today. They're focused on data ops, which kind of envelops all of the data pipeline capabilities and components. And then orchestration. We didn't have any pure play orchestration vendors here, but actually data ops does that as well.
Yeah, Wayne, I think there are a lot of, there's a good range of tools, and we had a good range of vendors represented here. One of the takeaways I would offer is that 2 ways to segment the market are to say, what's your level of focus on cloud versus hybrid environments? And how sophisticated are your requirements? Do you want to go with a suite or a best of breed tool? So those are 2 of the categories, 2 of the axes that you can use to categorize products and create your shortlist.
Awesome. Okay. I'm looking at the chat right now. So if you guys want to add some things in the chat, please do. I'll be checking it. Let me get back to the slides here. There we go. All right. Also thought, your framework was interesting to compare products by those 4 dimensions: suite. In other words, if you're offering more than one of those segments that we talked about, or your specialty focused on one. And then if you're really just focused on supporting the one cloud application, or multiple cloud and on-premises applications like StreamSets, which actually they're really excited by their acquisition by Software AG, because it gives them access to mainframes and all these legacy systems, as well as things like process integration and application integration, which kind of takes the whole integration beyond just what we do here in the data space. I thought that was kind of interesting. Got to keep an eye on that, see if that becomes a major trend.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go the practitioners. Jennifer and Ranajay, good to hear people in the trenches making this stuff work, overcoming the challenges. Jennifer mentioned a lot of interesting things. The need to completely be flexible because the business is changing, and all of a sudden the pipelines they're working on, they got to put to the side while they work on something new and strategic for the company. So I guess that requires a flexible development environment that you can come into and out of pretty quickly. Wow, she really mentioned the need for real time, right? And one reason I was fascinated for that was she said that if people didn't get the data in real time, they didn't trust it as much. That's pretty interesting. And then she mentioned they need to introduce unstructured data, and that's going to change the nature of their pipelines, and the importance of low-code, no-code tools to bring in a whole nother suite of developers. In fact, we kind of glossed over the data engineers versus analytics engineers. But the analytics engineers are really just hyper-focused on building out these pipelines as opposed to doing any infrastructure work. And supposedly you could make some business users, data-savvy business users with a low-code interface do those transforms. Would you agree with that, Kevin?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a movement to empower folks that are more business-oriented and don't have the technical skills, but do want to roll up their sleeves and start to prepare data for analytics. So there's definitely a movement afoot in that regard.
Awesome. Okay. Ranajay, he mentioned the importance of managing costs, and that came out in the panel as well. When we moved from ETL to ELT, leverage the processing power of databases for doing transformations. That's great. Better engines, bigger, faster engines, but the costs skyrocket if you're not managing those processes in a prescriptive way. So I think we're seeing a lot of emphasis, as you said, Kevin, on FinOps, which is how do we manage cloud costs and keep them from skyrocketing. He also mentioned that
Sure.
you need to move to prescriptive and predictive analytics, which will change the nature of his pipelines.
Yeah, very much. And when it comes to cost governance, there's a need to incorporate that into the design phase for data pipelines and environments, the operation stage, and then the optimization stage as well. You need to predict what the likely cloud costs are. You need to anticipate ways to improve utilization, reduce those costs, avoid unnecessary compute cycles. So there's a real science to it, and it involves a lot of different people wearing different hats. I think the data engineer plays a critical role in making the cloud ops folks smarter, the finance folks smarter, and
Yeah.
everything in between.
Yeah. And this move to predictive analytics, I think, wreaks havoc on your pipelines. I'm going to speculate. This is more your area, Kevin, but it seems to me, especially if you put a model into production in a production application, that pipeline has to replicate whatever the data scientist did to create the model and do it in real time and do it reliably, 24 by 7, 365. That puts a lot of onus on the data engineers and the ML ops engineers to create something that's industrial strength and scalable.
It really does, because once you put something into operation, you need to have high confidence that you are looking at the right features and you're doing the right calculation on those features that you identify within streaming data, and that you have meaningful correlations to data at rest, potentially within a data warehouse or a database. There are a lot of moving parts, and vigilant human oversight assisted by automated monitoring is critical.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our panel. A lot of good stuff there. A lot of them said that a lot of things these days are just table stakes, like, making sure the data is secure going through these pipelines, that you support lots of sources and lots of targets, so you don't have to, create custom connectors to fill in a gap. Although Nextflow was talking about creating auto connectors, auto creating connectors in its breakout session. I'd love to learn how it's doing that. And then, the full spectrum of low code, no code for, data analysts, data savvy business users, and full code for those who want that. And the combination so that you can switch from one to the other within the same platform. That seems to be table stakes now. Did I miss anything there?
No, I agree. The other interesting dimension that came through in the panel was just how much of a co-opetition landscape it is. I think Mike with StreamSets alluded to it, that they compete in some places and collaborate in others. Data ops helps you manage, among other things, Fivetran ingestion jobs. Fivetran integrates dbt as a native element, and all these environments are looking for ways they can help each other, because they recognize data engineers have a lot of tools and will continue to increase the number of tools despite their best intentions of consolidating.
A lot of talk about data products in the panel. Yeah, and I guess it makes sense. If you're bringing all this data from multiple sources and you can distribute it to multiple targets, well, I guess that's what a data product is. You create something from all these sources, and then if you package it in the proper way with metadata descriptions and ability to be reused and recreated on demand, you can push it to any channel, to any target. And that, I think, in some ways makes that thing at the end of the pipeline a reusable data asset or a data product. I think we're still trying to figure out what the true definition of that is.
We are, and I know. So our colleague Jay is digging in deep on data products and data mesh, and I think I agree with him, if I can paraphrase a little bit, that the data met product is probably the most attractive or a starting point for data mesh approaches, because if you can't standardize on modular products that are reusable have a fixed and reliable set of data and metadata, then everything else becomes more difficult in a mesh scenario.
Yeah, but I would argue, you should be creating data products no matter what the architecture you're using, right? Especially if you
Yeah.
plan to share that across boundaries, whether they're internal boundaries between departments or divisions, or external boundaries with partners, suppliers, customers, or people you don't even know, like in the external marketplace.
And I actually had a good conversation with one of our attendees about just that, and the notion of having sort of a marketplace view of your internal data products, also potentially your external data products, so that various consumers, based on their role, can access and view those. And that was
Yeah,
during the Q&A
yeah.
session.
And I'm a fan of data marketplaces, and
Yes.
Nexla did mention that they've got that capability now, and that also piqued my interest. I'm gonna have to dig into that more, see what they're doing there, because I do think, if you're gonna create data products, so the next step is publishing those products to anyone who needs them, whether you know them or not, whether they're internal or not. Anyway, let's keep moving on. Well, big focus on Snowflake. No surprise there. I'm there was also mention of Spark. No mention of Databricks, big competitor to Snowflake. But yeah, that's the dominant data warehousing player, though they don't want to be called that these days, right, Kevin?
The data cloud. They like the term data cloud.
Data cloud, yeah.
And
Okay.
Snowflake likes the term lakehouse. But I think the common construct of SQL queries on top of cloud object storage is where everyone's moving from different directions.
Yeah.
Whatever you call it.
So there's a quotable quote from Mike at StreamSets that shift happens when he was talking about data drift. And their product, evidently, I didn't know this at all, that their product, that's their secret sauce, like one of their key differentiators, the ability to monitor and manage that data shift that happens, especially when you're supporting predictive applications.
Yeah, and it could relate to infrastructure settings. It can relate to all kinds of things. Drift is a bigger concept and problem than I was aware of before I started working with StreamSets.
Yeah. Oh, okay. We talked a lot about data ops, which is kind of a Uber category in data integration. I think you said it earlier, it's just an umbrella that sits on top of all your data integration products and coordinates them, orchestrates them, helps you change them through CI/CD, helps you ensure quality through test automation. Lots of good stuff there. We just talked about data marketplaces and their value.
Yeah.
And that's all I had. Is there anything else, Kevin, that you came across?
Well, one thing that wasn't explicit in our discussion, but I think implicit, is that because of the nature of the cloud and having open APIs and elastic infrastructure, startups can now go broad out of the gate. The traditional paradigm for a startup would be to focus on a point tool, but there are startups like Rivery that are able to address all four segments of the market: ingestion, transformation, data ops, and orchestration out of the gate. And so that it turns upside down the usual assumptions of what startups are capable of. Now, there are obviously limitations in terms of what a startup can achieve with addressable market initially, but the cloud does kind of lower the barriers in new ways for founders.
Yeah, there was that talk of convergence, right?
Yeah.
And we do have a lot of data management products in the marketplace today, especially in the data integration space, data observability, data catalogs, metadata management. Yeah, lots and lots of stuff here. And you got to think that they can't all survive, I would think. So you're going to have to combine. We've already seen Click take that step, right? It was originally just a BI player, and then it acquired your old company, Attunity.
Yeah.
A few more data companies, and they're trying to be not only end-to-end data platform, but an end-to-end data and analytics platform. And we'll have to see if that's what people want. Or given that these tools today in the cloud are much more interoperable, maybe it's not such a big deal to go best of breed and just plug and play these tools together. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on that?
Well, it seems it'll continue to be a balancing act. On the one hand, organizations over time in tech have tried to standardize and go broad with a suite, but then there's the inevitable need to specialize in certain areas. So I think there'll always be on the margin the need for specialty tools, the new stuff, but over time that gets absorbed into broader suite tools.
Yeah, I do know that CFOs and COOs hate having multiple tools. They want their teams to just go out and buy one tool that does it all, easier to manage, one throat to choke, or hopefully organically integrated. So easier to use, easier to manage, requires fewer people to maintain. But, you give up some functionality, obviously. So anyway, I think that's all the key takeaways that I had, Kevin. I don't see any from the.
I think those are the big ones. The one other variable, we didn't answer it and wrestle it to the ground, but ChatGPT and generative AI is starting to become an assistant to data engineers and other types of professionals. And so I predict in 12 months, you'll have some of these platforms integrating with ChatGPT and including AI prompts, create this code, help us debug in this way, that kind of thing. So it'll be a new chapter of automation. Hopefully for the better. It'll also create the need for a lot of governance.